Hey guys, Rich here. I thought I'd do something slightly different today, in that it's kind of revealing some things to you. Not like that. It's revealing my process, and rather than having a walkthrough, which I so often do and have done, I'm going to talk you through my process, because this is the 10th album of Piano Works that I've done with Elephant Music. They have been hugely successful and have completely changed my life, so this kind of like 10th album for me is huge. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about my process for it. And I want to talk to you about it, not show you. Talk to you, because my thought process is the thing that happens before I even start doing anything. Piano Works 10, this is going to be a big one. And not just because it's the 10th album, but we wanted it to be a big sound. You know, it's loosely Piano Works, because it's not like the first 5 albums, which were solo piano pretty much. This is piano-based, hybrid and epic orchestral. But my process for it is still the same. It's still the same, and that's why I absolutely love it. I start with my piano, which in this case is Alicia's keys, and always has been throughout the Piano Works albums, although the first 5 admittedly was Spitfire soft piano, but the Alicia keys was there. So I start with my piano, and I decide on a chord sequence. That's it. That then becomes my track. I have a chord sequence, and I don't say, like, you know, I want to come up with something original, I want to come up with something that no one's ever done before, because I know that's not going to happen. I go, let's choose a chord sequence. A minor, F, C, G, how's that? And then I write, okay? A minor, F, C, and G. And my first thought is, okay, well Act 1 is going to be setting the tone. So I might reveal the chord sequence, but it will probably just hint at a tone. So it will be pads, or booms, or drones, or some small broken ostinato, broken arpeggio of the chord sequence. Act 2, it's really straightforward. I take the same chord sequence and I go, well, how can I make this into an interesting arpeggio that sets pace, that gives a sense of drama, of building? And then Act 3 is I just take those chords, A minor, F, C, G, I put them into a string patch and I pad them out. So I put the root notes, or, you know, whichever inversion I'm doing, let's be honest, it's almost in root position, so it would be A, F, C, G in the bass, and I double that, so 2 octaves of that, and then I'll have the 3rd and the 5th in the mid-range, and then the top line will probably be a melody based around the chord tones that just has a passing tone or a neighbour tone between the chord tones. I do very, very little when it comes to thinking melodically, because often, if you listen to a lot of the best trailer stuff, the melodies are so simple and they're usually almost always chord tone based. And what I mean by that is, if it's an A minor, it will be either an A, C, or E, and moving between them. And then what I do is I add the modulation into this one patch, right? So it will be long strings, and then I'll add the modulation so that I can then copy and paste all of those. Copy and paste that into all my brass, into all my strings. Voila, they're all having the same swells now because of the same modulation copy. I then remove the extraneous notes. Extraneous? Extra notes I don't need. So if I'm putting it into tubas or some basso, then I will just have the bass notes possibly double. The horns and trombones will take the mids, and then maybe the horns will also take the top line, possibly trumpets. Same with strings. Bass cello will take the root notes, violas seconds will take the mids, and first violins and possibly divisi in the first and seconds will take a top line and melody. And then that melody will then be doubled by a second piano, ping, announcing the attack. Sometimes a celeste or a Glock will do the job because it cuts through the mix nicely. And then I will just go, hey, there's my sketch done. In fact, there's pretty much my entire track done. Let's chuck in some trailer stuff. I then chuck in some taiko rolls, timpani rolls, usually on every, usually at the start, almost always at the start of every act. And then every 2, 4, or 8 bars. And then I will have like surdos or toms, hammering out a very basic rhythm. like dum, 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 stuff like that. Really just emphatic to bring out the start of every chord. I mean, that's what I'm doing, and to give it some sense of pace. And then what I'll do is I'll go, okay, well maybe I need some more pace in the third act, and I will take the short strings and I will create a different arpeggio from Act 2 and put that in there. I know you're probably thinking, well, I want to see this, Rich, and I will show you. I do always show you my thinking and how I do stuff, but this is how I write my Piano Works track, and this is actually how I write almost all of my music. Chord sequence, pattern, and then the rest of it just falls into place. I let my initial thought do the heavy lifting, and that initial thought is, what's the chord sequence? And I don't say, oh, it has to be original or interesting. No, it doesn't. If you want to make it original or interesting, add a signature sound, or produce it differently. You know, you're not going to make your, in a minor key, your first and flat sixth sound different just because you hear them all the time, or in a minor key, first, flat 7, flat 6, dominant 5. You're not going to hear, I mean, I think 4 of the Avengers trailers had that same chord sequence because they were produced differently. There's your stuff. And it's the details within that. So let the chord sequence do the heavy lifting for you. The chord sequence will take away all of those worries or confusions you have. If you get the chord sequence first, then everything else is just plain sailing. You don't have to think about how you're going to create tension, because you know that the chords are creating the tension for you. And you can just add to that, you know, in your arpeggios. You can add in some, rather than just chord tones, you can add in some ninths or 11ths or whatever you want to do to make it feel more tense. And another thing I like to do with Piano Works is I like to have an arpeggio that's based around the chord, and then I will bring in, as I said, the ninths and the 11ths as sort of passing notes, or neighbour tones, whatever you want to call it. Notes in between. And I will usually have a syncopated root note underneath, you know, a la Philip Glass type of thing. And there we have it. That is basically it. You know, and I will use the same samples throughout the whole process. I will use, what my samples I use. Spitfire Albion for strings and Spitfire Symphonic strings. I will use Metropolis Arc for brass and Hollywood Brass for brass. And drums would be 8Dio's Tychos, Spitfire Albion for their some of their mid and lower stick hits, Spitfire Audio's Hans Zimmer percussion, and that's basically it. I mean, and I'll just use the same stuff over and over again. It's working on a pattern that has been successful for me. When I was growing up, you know, you probably remember this, that you know, you'd be a fan of a band and they'd release a new album and everyone would be like, oh mate, they've totally sold out, they've done exactly the same thing. Why is that selling out? Is that just giving you guys what you want? You know, and then as a band who's brave enough to do something different, everyone's like, oh, it's well off. It's not them. They're trying to do something different to be cool, and then everyone would stop liking them. You know, as creatives, as musicians, we're kind of like fighting a losing battle constantly. So just do what you want to do, and do what you enjoy, and do what interests you. And I enjoy making piano music that is formulaic. I enjoy just not worrying about the chord sequence, and then finding sounds or arpeggios and patterns that are interesting. Again, they're not original. You know, I'm not going to say that my music is original, because it's not. But I really enjoy producing it. So you know, you guys have seen some of my walkthroughs. You've probably seen some of my courses too. So you know how I write. I'm very transparent about it. I want to just talk to you because some of you have asked me about how to write an album of tracks that are all different but the same. That's how I do it. You know, the chord sequence is the thing that makes them different. Everything else, keep the same. Don't give yourself decision fatigue when writing. Decision fatigue will be brought on by trying to change too much stuff between the tracks. You know, if you're writing sometimes Vic has been asking me to do sort of a 21 track album, and it's like, blimey, 21 tracks that are different but the same. So limit as much as you can, using a template, using the sounds, and then just go, well, what am I going to change? So with throat, it's more often than not, it's the rhythms that I change rather than the chord sequence. So yeah, a bit of a longer one today, but I really want to talk about my process and talk about it without a screen in front of me, so that you guys can understand that that's actually how I do it. And I will start with that thought process. What's my sequence? Boom, and the rest just falls into place because it's already laid out. Haha, win-win. You guys are legends. Take care.